Hi, this is Carrie from sniptoit.com. Are you looking for help after your cutting machine has completely mangled your small text with the letters lifting or tearing out of the vinyl? Or maybe you're planning a project using tiny lettering, like cards, labels, custom ribbon, or mini decor. In this video, I will guide you through getting the best cuts for your tiny text of 1/2 inch tall or less. I will explain how to choose the best fonts, materials, and settings for cutting small letters, and I will make a project to illustrate how you can use small fonts cut from different types of vinyl. For my example today, I'm actually going to make this project where I use adhesive vinyl to cut very small lettering for a gift tag, and where I cut 1/4 inch tall letters out of HTV to label a custom ribbon. So to start, the three main things that have an impact on how well tiny letters will cut are your choice of font, the type and brand of vinyl you use, and the cut settings you're using. So first, when choosing a font, thicker fonts cut better than skinny fonts. Plainer fonts cut more easily than fonts with lots of embellishments like swirls or other tiny details. And fonts that have a relatively uniform thickness will cut better than fonts that have a lot of thick and thin details like ribbon fonts. In the description below, you will find a link to the article that accompanies this video, and in it I include a bunch of recommended fonts that I have test cut at 1/4 inch tall. So if you want a list of both free and Cricut fonts that will cut well at a small size, go to the article. If you really have your heart set on a thinner font though, you can always add an offset to make your font cuttable at a small size. Click on your text and open the offset tool. Add an offset somewhere between 0.005 and 0.01 inches. Click Apply, and the result will be a thicker version of your text that hopefully you will be able to cut. This is BFC French bread cut at 1/4 inch tall out of Cricut Premium Vinyl, both with no offset and with that 0.01 inch offset. You can see that with an offset, it cut and weeded just fine. So choice of fonts really matters a lot when you're trying to cut letters at a very small size. But another factor that is going to have a big impact on cutting small fonts is your choice of vinyl. HTV is always easier to cut than adhesive vinyl. When using HTV, tiny letters should cut just as easily as a standard size font without adjusting your cut settings, pretty much with any brand. If you're using adhesive vinyl though, you will probably have to adjust your cut settings. I have found that brand of adhesive vinyl does make a very big difference, and for cutting small fonts, my favorite is actually Cricut Premium Vinyl. I can cut small text out of that vinyl using just the regular premium vinyl setting and the fine point blade. I love Oracal 651, but it is not a great choice for cutting tiny text and small details because it has a very slippery siliconized backing sheet. Because the backing paper is so slippery, tiny characters get lifted easily and can stick to the cutting blade or get pushed to the side. If you want to use Oracal 651, thicker vinyls like shimmer or any other kind of vinyl that's not cutting as easily, then it is time to change your cut settings. Which brings us to the third key factor when it comes to cutting small lettering: cut settings. There are 3 adjustments that make cutting small details easier for any cutting machine. So the first is reducing the downward cutting force, the second is reducing cut speed, and the third is helping the machine handle corners. So with Cricut machines, the only cut setting you can actually adjust yourself is downward force, and you can either do that manually or you can choose a cut setting that has less downward force like washi sheet or washi tape. The washi settings reduce cutting force but do not slow the cutting speed. I've actually timed it myself. But this does seem to be sufficient to help Cricut machines handle cutting small fonts. And reducing your cutting force is particularly helpful if you have a Maker or a Maker 3, which both tend to have a heavy hand when it comes to cut pressure. So if you want to use a washi setting with a fine point blade, if you're using a Maker type machine, use default or less pressure for your starting test cut. And if you're using an Explore Air 2, you probably will want to use more pressure when you're doing your first test cut. Makers are better for precision cutting than the Explore Air 2, so if you have a maker, you might get the results you want just by using the washi sheet setting and the fine point blade. But if you have an Explore machine, or if you have a maker and just want to give your machine the very best help handling corners around tiny letters, use the washi setting and switch to the deep point blade. So why does the deep point blade help your Cricut handle corners? Well, the deep point blade has a 60-degree cutting edge, whereas the fine point blade has a 45-degree cutting edge. And this longer, steeper cutting edge of the deep point blade allows it to cut thicker materials, which is what Cricut advertises it for, but it also gives it a much tighter turning radius when cutting regular vinyl. When I cut tiny details out of adhesive vinyl, especially vinyl like shimmer or textured metallic, I always use the washi sheet setting with the deep point blade. Here's how to change your blade setting if you want to use washi sheet with a deep point blade. When your project is ready, hit the Make It button. On the Set, Load, and Go page, choose Browse All Materials. In the bottom left-hand corner of the Materials list, click Materials Settings. Find the washi sheet setting and choose Edit. Set Multi-Cut to Off and select Deep Point Blade from the pull-down menu. Click the Save button, and now your default setting for washi sheet will use the deep point blade. Click Done at the bottom right-hand corner to return to the Set, Load, and Go page, and choose washi sheet from the custom materials list to proceed. So I'm going to make a project where I have a small wrap present here. I'm going to make a custom ribbon and a gift tag. Make sure that you get 100% polyester ribbon and not nylon. I have EasyWeed Electric in white, and I've got my Cricut Premium Vinyl in matte silver for on my tag. So here I have my HTV, and this is Siser EasyWeed Electric in white. What I've done is I have weeded out the counters, the little spaces in the E's and the B and the S's, and now I'm just going to weed the rest. You can see HTV is a lot easier to weed. You know, you still want to be careful, especially making sure that the dot of the I stays in there. Look at how easy that is. HTV is really a lot easier to weed than adhesive vinyl. One of the things that really makes weeding easier, I always use Tweezerman pointed tweezers. I've had these for 15 years, and I use them for all this stuff. They're so good for all this weeding. That is super easy. So if you have tiny lettering, I really do recommend trying it with HTV first if that'll work for your application. Even on cardstock, HTV works quite well. Certainly Siser EasyWeed works nice on all cardstock that I've tried. So here I have my adhesive vinyl, and I cut this using the washi sheet setting with the deep point blade. I'm leaving this on the mat as I weed out the little counters, the little holes in letters first. One thing that I always do when I'm weeding little blocks of text, I always cut them in a weeding box, and so that's what I'm just going to weed away right now. So just make sure the little dots in your eyes and stuff like that stay down. There, perfect. This font is Lobster, which is one of the fonts that I have posted later in the article as a good exemplar font to use. Some people prefer what's called reverse weeding. You take your piece of adhesive vinyl, you put your transfer tape on the front, and then you remove the adhesive backing and then weed from there. It's more like using HTV. I don't really like this method because the vinyl has a tendency to stick to itself. I don't like this. The key to this is not letting the vinyl stick to itself as you peel it up. I'm sure there are people who find this easier. I am really not one of them. I prefer weeding just the normal way so that I don't have to deal with the adhesive vinyl sticking to itself. But you can see you can do reverse weeding as well and it'll turn out fine. So there you go. Tag is all finished. So I'm just going to press my ribbon, and the good news about this is that it's very easy to do. I haven't had any ribbon ever not work out. I already measured like how much length of ribbon I need and all of that for the present, and I'm just going to do both ends. Anyway, I am using an easy press, but I'm going to use the normal application temperature for Siser rather than adding 30 degrees, which I would normally do. Because the ribbon's not going to get washed or anything like that, and I don't want to use too high of a temperature on the polyester. I'm going to use a Teflon sheet on this and medium firm pressure. And this can get a hot peel. So, you see, turns out really nice. Very simple. And, you know, you could actually put this all along the ribbon if you want. Just a hot peel. And there you go. Okay, so there you can see our tiny fonts in action. So our less than ½ inch tall adhesive vinyl and a ¼ inch tall HTV. You know, tiny fonts shouldn't be something you're afraid of. I've included lots of different fonts that you could use, and I absolutely love making custom ribbon for on gifts. You can see 100% polyester ribbon, just a couple of bucks from Michaels. You can make it look fabulous.